We're going to be jumping into the story of Samuel here. It's chapter 17. I invite you to turn there, 1 Samuel chapter 17. We're looking at the story of David now, and from chapter 16 on, the whole story really focuses in on David. He's a central figure from chapter 16 all the way through 2 Samuel. So basically half of 1 Samuel and the rest of 2 Samuel is all about David, and everything revolves around David. And so today is arguably one of the most famous stories ever about David. It's David and Goliath. Like, how do you not even just trying to create a different title on that is just, I've tried and it just doesn't work. It's just David and Goliath. Everybody knows that. So we're going to be looking at this story, and I want to, it's hard to do this because it's a famous story. Like, people who don't even go to church know about David and Goliath. And so some of you, this is going to be old, and how do you have fresh eyes on something new? Well, here's a question I have. Have you discovered everything there is to know about love? No. Do you understand logically what love is? Sure. But we grow. We mature. And what love and what we understand love to be in our, when we are in grade school or in high school, then we get in college, and we get in our 20s, and we understand love differently. We get into our 30s and our 40s, and all of a sudden love takes on different understanding, deeper meaning. And the Word of God is like that. We're not the same the last time we read this. You're different, hopefully more mature. Hopefully wiser. I would imagine older, because this happened at a different time earlier. And so hopefully this story today may be something you have memorized. You did the felt board story back in Sunday school. You know this story, but I'm hoping today it'll be fresh. So David and Goliath, it starts chapter 17, and it starts off with this introduction, just real quick. The Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Socoh, which belongs to Judah, which means they're actually in Israel territory, and they're encamped between Socoh and Ezekah and Ephes-Dammim, or how you say it, Ephes-Dammim. I practiced that over and over again. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and camped at the valley of Elah and drew up lines of battle against the Philistines. So they're in this basically got mountain range on either side. Well, mountain's generous, but they call them mountains, right? And there's a valley in between them, and the Israelites are on one side of the mountain, and the other guys are on the other side, and the valley's in between them, and they got this long battle line that they've drawn up. And they're coming to fight, but the problem is Philistines have been taking ground from Israel, and now it's happening actually in Israel's lands. And so that's the setting, and here we go with the battle, right? The Philistines, verse 4. And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head. He was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and his shield bearer went before him. So this guy's, according to this, he's 9'9". He's a giant. His armor weighs about 125 pounds. That's just his armor. The tip of the spear is 15 pounds. That doesn't account for the shaft that could hold that thing and launch that thing. He's a giant. And you're thinking, is he really a giant? Is that really? Well, and I've never talked about this, and it's in the Bible. If you go back and you read Genesis chapter 6, there are fallen angels who basically take women as wives, and they have this offspring that are called the Nephilim, which end up being giants. And you see this giant, and it happens all before Noah, and then Noah happens, and everybody gets wiped out, but it looks like it happened again because these giants are still in the land. And they're big. They're really big, 9'9". He's a big guy. And he's coming forward as, obviously, as we all know, the champion of the Philistine army. And he's basically, if you face this guy, he's more like demon than he is human from the Israel standpoint. Like, how in the world do you fight a guy like this who's 9'9"? Intimidating, scary as all get out. And so he stands in verse 8 and he shouts to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come to draw up for battle?" Right? I don't know if that's his voice. "Am I not a Philistine? Are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, then we'll be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, you shall be our servants and serve us." Ha, 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 ha. And then the Philistine says, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." And when Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistines, they were dismayed. It sounds quite British. They were dismayed. I think, and greatly afraid. So he throws the gauntlet down. And the author wants us to feel the sheer impossibility of this moment. This is impossible. There's no way this is ever going to happen. They are going to be, at some point, slaves of the Philistine because nobody can win this battle. And the response is obvious because the Israelites, they're terrified, they're dismayed. And verse 16 says this went on for 40 days. They'd go down to the line, he would challenge them, and the courage would just literally pour out of them into the ground, and they'd go back. 40 days, day after day. And there's not one Israelite that's willing to do anything about it because they don't want to die. What's tragic is they're following their leader. And the story here, as we start to watch this play out, the story is not about David and Goliath. Goliath's name is only used one more time in this whole story. The story is about Saul and David. Actually, it's about David and Saul. Saul's spoken of all the time through the story. David is spoken of all the time, over and over here. David, over and over here. You hear Saul. You only hear Goliath's name, I think it's twice. Other than that, he's just a Philistine because he's not the point. The point is these two men, two kings. And you see the king of Israel who has a sword, right? The king of Israel's head taller than everybody else in Israel. He looks like a champion. He was anointed as champion. He's the king. He is the champion of Israel. And he runs every time. The king runs from the battle. He's chosen by God. He's anointed by God. And so then we get to verse 12. You ever heard like Peter and the Wolf? Anybody ever play that? Do you guys know Peter and the Wolf, the little dun, dun, da, 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 and then they'd have little like theme songs for each animal or each character in there. I feel like David, we should have like a little flute playing because he's just this shepherd. Sorry, that's just random, but that's just what goes on in my mind. So David, the son of an Ephrathite of Bethlehem of Judea, named Jesse, right, who had 8 sons. In the days of Saul, the man was already old and advanced in years. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to battle, and the names of his 3 sons who went to battle with were Elah, the firstborn, and next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. Shout out to all the babies in the family. Let's go. But David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days, the Philistine had come forward and took his stand morning and evening. And what the author does is he sets up this moment where we just see David as this innocent little shepherd boy, just kind of, going around. He's just so happy, and he's just minding the sheep. And you've got this dark, looming clouds of oppression and threat. It's not warrior material here. That's not David, right? He's not warrior material. It goes on to say, Jesse said to David, his son, take for your brothers and the ephah of this parched grain, and take these 10 loaves and carry them quickly to the camp to your brothers, and take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their 1,000, and see your brothers, that your brothers are well, and bring some token from them back. His dad wants to know that they're still alive, or maybe they can give him a message. But you just get this sense that David's just a messenger boy. He's a shepherd boy. He's just delivering food. He's, Uber. I don't know. Israel is not looking at David or thinking about David as their champion. No way. They're hoping somebody would stand up to that Philistine, but obviously it's not going to be David. So David takes the bread. And here we go into the heart, the story starts to heat up here, right? Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. And David rose early in the morning, left with the sheep and the keeper, took the provisions, and went as Jesse had commanded them. He came to the encampment as the host was going out to the battle line, shouting the war cry. And Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. And David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage. He's like, I want to go out there. And he ran to the ranks and went and greeted his brothers. So it was just kind of funny. I'm like, they're all drawn up, about ready to do their war cry. And David's like giving high fives. Hey, how you guys doing? Like he's talking, greeting guys, bringing some food. And behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And David heard him. 40 days. This is the 40th day. He's speaking these words, and David hears it for the first time. And he starts asking questions. What in the world? Like, what? Wait, what was that? And of course, all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, they fled from him, and they were much afraid. And David's running with them, going, why are we running? Like, the men of Israel said, have you seen this guy? Look at this guy who's come up. Surely he's come up to defy Israel. And the king's going to enrich the man who kills him with great riches. He'll give him his daughter, which happens to be Michal, that's her name. And he'll make his father's house free in Israel, like tax-free, free of everything. And David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done to the man who kills this Philistine, and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered in the same way, like, that's just what we just said. So shall it be done to the man who kills him. So Saul is trying to obviously sweeten the pot, trying to motivate someone. I'll give you lots of money. I'll give you my daughter in marriage. I don't think he probably asked Michal for permission, but Michal's up on the offering, and then it's tax-free status for all you people who want no taxes. Tax-free for the rest of your life. The sad thing is Michal's home, and I don't know whether she hears the news, but she's hearing the news that she's part of like the incentive, and then, well, nobody's volunteering, and she's like, thanks, Dad. Thanks, appreciate that. Guess I'm not that important or whatever. She's thinking, in that sense, from their perspective, obviously, nobody's doing it because the whole point of having riches and having a wife and being tax-free is that you live to enjoy it. And obviously, none of them think it's a non-starter. There's a famous actor that once said, I'm not afraid of death, it's just I don't want to be there when it happens. So David starts asking the questions, and the Philistine now starts to contrast. This is where you see more contrasting happening. Philistine is this pressure point. It shows the people of Israel, or the men of Israel, right? The army of Israel, and contrasts them because they're running, and David actually had to run with them. He had to do the retreat, and he's retreating as they're retreating, going, why are we running? What is going on? Who is this guy? And what, does the king know about this? You got to think David's getting upset. How in the world are we running from the battle line? The contrast couldn't be clearer. Philistine is gripped by fear. They're gripped, by dismay. And David is just in the grips of righteous anger. Of course, he starts talking about this. What's going on? He's trying to figure it out, trying to ask these questions. And Eliab, his oldest brother, comes along, and he hears, right? He speaks to the men. And Eliab's anger is now kindled at David. He's like, why you come down? Who did you leave the sheep with in the wilderness? I know what you're doing. You just want to come down here. I know the evil in your heart. You just want to see the battle. And David's like, bro, what is your problem? Like any sibling fight. He's like, what have I done? I just asked a question. Holy projection. You see that. It's Eliab's anger is more at himself. He's angry at his brother, but it's really himself. He's been running for 40 days, and he's ashamed of it. So David turns away from him and goes towards another and speaks to someone else, and the people start answering, and it's the same answer every time. And David's he's thinking about, well, wait a minute, this is wrong. And we start to see what's driving him, and he keeps talking about this, and he keeps asking questions, and he's angry, and then the words that David spoke were heard and repeated before Saul. Saul sends him, and David said to Saul, hey, look, I'm your guy. Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you're not able to go fight this Philistine and fight with him, for you're just a teenager. You're youth. And this guy's a man of war since he was a baby. And David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear, he took the lamb from the flock. I went after him, and I struck him down, delivered it out of his mouth. And if he rose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears. This uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord, who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul's like, go get him, tiger. It's interesting. It's the teenager who has the clarity, right? They haven't lived long enough to be roughed up by life to know that, faith doesn't work like it should, right? David's a teenager, and he's like, of course, this is just what God does. Like, let's go. Isn't that interesting? It's clear to him who God is. It's just so clear. Is your faith in God as clear as it was when you started? Is our faith where we come and we go, he's God, and it's just one of those experiences or moments in life where everything is clear and we see him for who he is, and of course God is Almighty God. David is, in a sense, just a guy who has been hanging out in the field with God. That's all he's been doing. Guarding sheep and being with God. And he comes into this camp to discover that Philistine phobia has taken hold of the army. Everybody caught it. It's like a sickness. They all came down with it, and he can't believe what he's seeing. And he's like, I'm going to rip this guy to shreds. I am going to destroy this guy. And Saul is actually, I think what's interesting, is consumed by what he can see. All he can see is David. And that's all the Israelites can see is David. And that's all they can see is this Philistine who's a giant. But they can't see God. It's like this giant is blocking everything about what they know about God. And they can't see him. I think it's interesting. I was reading Eugene Peterson. I'm trying to think of where. Oh, yeah, it's actually down here a little bit. These verses right here, which is interesting, David is the first person to actually mention the name God. Saul never mentions the name God in this story. David is the first one. He does it over in verse 27, or 26 rather, and now he's doing it again in verse 37. Saul never talks about God because Saul is consumed with appearances. And Eugene Peterson, he wrote a commentary on this. He's a famous pastor. He says, David was a man who practiced the presence of God so thoroughly that God was far more real to him than the lion's roar or the bear's ferocity. His imagination was so God-dominated, he could not believe what he was seeing. I like that, right? His imagination was so God-dominated, he's looking out and goes, I can't believe what I'm seeing. This should not be. How is this even possible? Is your imagination God-dominated? Does he so dominate our minds, our hearts, our thinking, our way of living, so that when we look at giants, we really don't see a battle with a giant as much as we see a God who will win? So Saul, here's the contrast. Saul clothes David with his armor in verse 38. And so David puts on a helmet of bronze on his head, and clothes him with coat of mail, and David straps Saul's sword over his armor, and he tries in vain to go, but he hadn't tested him. And so here you have Saul looking at him going, well, I got to dress him, and David's like, I can't go with these. I haven't tested him. Do you know how hard it would be to tell the king this is a bad idea? Like, you just don't tell your king. How hard is it to even tell a boss that's a bad idea? Carla told me I had bad ideas. And protected the church. Borrowed armor, borrowed swords never work. They don't. David couldn't borrow Saul's armor any more than Saul could borrow David's heart after God. That's why God chose him. I'm choosing someone who has a heart after me. And what does a heart after me look like? This is what a heart after God looks like. This is how it looks. It's like one of those things. Don't ask me to explain it. If I explain it, it's going to sound real stupid. But I can show it to you. Let me just show it to you. This is what a heart after God looks like. You want to know what a heart after God is? This is a heart after God. It's like, I can't wear this stuff. You ever try or dream about having someone else's faith? Like, you think of, like, Billy Graham. I don't know who you would think of. Famous people, Martin Luther back in the 1500s, D.L. Moody, Peter, Paul, Mary, I know Johnny Erickson, Tata. I know it's a band, sorry, but it's also, they're biblical characters. A.B. Simpson, founder of a denomination. You can't borrow somebody else's faith. You could lean on someone else's faith for a moment or two as you go through life, and that's the Christian life. We support each other. We lean on each other. But it's our faith. So David, he's like, I can't do this. Takes off the armor. And then he took his staff in his hand, and he chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch and the sling in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. Why 5 smooth stones? Well, Goliath had 4 brothers. So 4 other giants in the land. A lot of giants roaming around in them hills. He got 5 stones. 1 for Goliath. Doesn't say it's for the other ones, but the math adds up. I'm not saying it is. I won't die for it, but I'm about a 6 on that in terms of certainty. 7. When, on a good day, 8. So the Philistine moves forward. Come near David and his shield bearer in front of him. And then the Philistine looked and saw David. He disdained him for what he was, but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. And the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with attacks or with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. And he's yelling. I mean, he's got, the whole armies are hearing this, right? Curses him and his gods. The problem is the Philistines did not send a historian as their champion. I mean, he's a warrior, but he's not a historian, because if you flash back 30 years, you remember when the Philistine god Dagon, encountered God because they had the Ark of the Covenant, and Dagon fell on his face, and then they propped him back up because their God needed help, and then the next day was on his face, head chopped off, hands chopped off, and apparently it looks like all the Philistines got hemorrhoids. It's not a good moment 30 years ago. And he's over here like cursing them in the name of his gods, and you're like, did you realize how bad it went last time? No. And David says to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin. I will come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you defied. This day the Lord will deliver you to my hand. I will strike you down. I will cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air, to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know the Lord saves, not with a sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord, and he will give you into our hands. He comes right back at him. He's traveling light, and he's coming back, and he says, look, I'm coming in the name of the Lord. And you start to read all the Psalms that David wrote, right? David wrote a bunch of Psalms. And you come across these Psalms. One of them says, people trust in chariots, some trust in horses. We trust in the name of the Lord. That's one of his songs. And what does it mean to come in the name of the Lord? Because he says, I'm coming to you in the name of the Lord. If you say the name, and it's equivalent to all that God is. So when you say Jesus, it's all that God is. When you say God the Father, it is all that God is. The Lord, the host, right? He says, the Lord of hosts, the warrior God. Peter once walked by this lame beggar, and the beggar's like, can you give me some money? And Peter's like, I got no money, but I'll tell you what I do have. In the name of God, rise up. Peter had the name. See, if you have God, you've got his name, and you've got power, and he's authorized you to use it. I love it. He's just like, I'm coming to you in the name of the Lord. And you're like, in the name of the Lord, all you got is 5 stones and a sling. But when you got the name of the Lord, oh, you got the name of the Lord. David had the name of the Lord. Do you know you have the name of the Lord? what happens is a complete rout, right? Philistine arose, came, drew near to meet David. David runs quickly to the battle line. Saul is watching. The king of Israel, the champion of Israel, is afraid, and he's watching. David puts his hand in his bag, takes out a stone, slings it, strikes the head of the Philistine on his forehead. Stone stinks in his forehead. It falls on his face. David prevails over the Philistine with a sling, with a stone, and struck the Philistine. Killed him right there. There was no sword in the hand of David, so when David ran over and stood over the Philistine, took his own sword, drew it out of his sheath, and killed him and cut off his head with it. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and Judah rose with a shout, pursued the Philistines as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron, so that the wounded Philistines fell on the way from Sharim as far as Gath and Ekron. And the people of Israel came back from chasing the Philistines. They plundered their camp, and David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem. But he put his armor in a tent, and has more to the story. But you see, literally the lines, the territorial lines, the national lines got pushed way back. Now they're deep into Philistine territory, which is actually was supposed to be the promised land. They're taking back the land. Do you know the power of the name of God? I mean, we're doing this whole, revival, praying for God to move. But I wonder sometimes, the reason we're doing it is because I think we rely so much on what we see, so much we can put in our hands, and we don't rely on who God is in his name. And we don't think it really, we can just do it, right? We're good enough. We're smart enough. I don't know what you're facing. I don't know what's in your life. About 4 years ago, my wife and I came here just a little over 4 years ago, and we're part of the denomination. There's churches up and down Florida, and they try to get us together, territorial, like places that were close together. So I meet with about 5 or 6 pastors from Fort Myers up the Tampa area. Actually, not Tampa, just Sarasota and down Palmetto. But so we've been meeting for 4 years, and there's a guy there. He's part of a church that's down in between here and Fort Myers, and he came onto this church, and there was this lease negotiated where the church, CMA, had bought this church and property, and we're leasing it back to a dying church. They were dying, and so we came along, because we had a church plant that was growing and exploding, and we said, hey, look, can we get this property, buy this property? And like, yeah, sure. So we do this deal. It's a horrible deal. It's one of the worst deals ever made in the history of deal making. And our guy who made the deal did not use help, and he had no business making deals because he's not good at deals. This is a horrible deal. The problem was there was 2 men, there's a pastor and an elder in that church of the other church and denomination, and they were wolves. They were wolves in sheep's clothing, and they were terrible people. And we would hear these stories of how they would make this church so miserable. And they would just rattle the sword of lawsuits, and they'd be over there with a list and always be calling, always be complaining, and just, it was awful. It was a terrible relationship. And so for 3 years, all the way up even to last year, kept hearing about it. I'm like, oh my word. And it was killing momentum of the church because of just how much they were sucking the life out of everything. And they were wolves. I'm telling you, they were wolves. It was evil what they were doing because they were fighting against the kingdom of God. And about 10 months ago, we were praying. We got together, and this pastor was sharing, and he was to the point he wanted to quit. He was trying to find a different place to go, but he didn't feel like he could leave because he didn't want to leave that church, his own people, left to the wolves. And so he's there, but he wants to quit. He wants to just tries to start another part-time job just because it was driving down the church as well. And so he shared the most recent stories, and I was just like, are you kidding me? It was just awful. And something happened in that moment. I haven't seen this happen in all my years of ministry. We just prayed as a group of men. We said, take them out. Take them out of that church, whatever it takes to get them out of there. All of us did. And, you have these prayers and psalms that, we live under the new covenant. And Christ turns in and says, no, bless those who persecute you. And so we weren't praying anything that would bring a curse. We were just saying, God, would you get them out? You've got to get them out. And we just said, in the name of Christ, we break their hold on this church. We break any authority they have over this church. We break everything. In the spiritual realms, we break it. And we just intercede and we say, get them out of here. 8 months later, both those men are dead. Dead. We do not come with lawsuits. We don't come with swords and guns. We come in the name of the Lord. That is the only time I've ever prayed that prayer with a group of men, and we had no idea that get them out meant, or take them out meant, take them out. The other denomination came in, and they saw what was going on, and they were horrified by it. It's very hard for a denomination to come in and just get rid of local leaders. And you would say, yeah, you got all the power in the world, but you can't use it. It's very difficult. The relationship is completely flipped. And that denomination has come in and said, how can we make things right? How can we help you guys? How can we redo this lease? How can we redo this whole thing? So we want to bless you guys. What you and I face in life, we just don't do it alone. We do it with the Lord. We do. We do it with the Lord. So we don't have to run. We just don't. We don't have to run. We have the name of the Lord. The question is, are we spending the time so that we know who the Lord is? So when something comes, we go, in the name of the Lord, this doesn't stand. No, I don't care. I know God. I invite the team to come up. What if today we just dust off again who God is? Remember who He is. What if today, if you have been running in fear and you are dismayed, I love that word, if you are dismayed, what if today you run not because it's emotional, but because you know the name of the Lord. And you run to the battle this time. And you go, no, I know the name of the Lord. This stops. In the name of Christ, it stops. That's someone who has a heart after God.